Hi everyone, Ashley Mailloux here with the Daily Racing Form. This Saturday, July 1st at Woodbine, they have a jam-packed card, lots of races, but a lot of stakes races as well. We're going to do a stakes preview here for race number 7, the Grade 3 Selene, featuring 3-year-old fillies going a mile and a 16th. And obviously, looking at these sorts of horses, you start thinking Woodbine Oaks and the rest of kind of their series for the summer. So this is a very important race. We'll look at this field. It's certainly not a small one. We have a field of 10. Looking at some of the names in here, the 3 Honor D Lady is one to point out, as well as a few others. Be My Sunshine and Blind Spot. Why am I pointing these 3 out? All trained by Safi Joseph Jr. So he's got 3 of the 10 in here. Mark Cassie's going to send out Wonder Wheel. She needs no introductions. A Grade 1 winner in her career. She's amassed over 1.5 million in earnings. And even some others. Josie Carroll has a few runners in here. Mark Cassie also sends out the 10 solo album. Was a pretty nice maiden winner last time out. So a lot to get through, a lot to talk about. We'll start with the number 1, 4570. This one out of the Barbara Minchell barn was a winner last time out, was able to pick up that second lifetime win, was forward in that race going 7 ace, was favored in there, got the job done by a half length. Now Kazushi Kimura was aboard, going to take another horse in this field. And I think, looking at her race, it was one of her better efforts. She did race pretty well last year as a 2-year-old in the Princess Elizabeth, but she's going to need to probably find more against some of these more seasoned fillies who've had their fair share of stakes competition. She draws on the rail, and as I mentioned, gets a new rider in here. The number 2, Friends for Life, was third behind 4570 last time out in her first start on the year. And looking at her campaign as a 2-year-old, really nice to see her win on debut. Then she was third on the turf, but was actually awarded the purse money for second. And then in her final appearance at going a mile and a 16th in the Princess Elizabeth, forwardly placed. She had a bunch of trouble in there, really unsure to say what happened, but she ended up finishing last. So really great to see her regroup with a third place finish in her only start. Obviously, there's totally room for improvement. Second off the layoff. She'll be a price in here, though. And interesting to note, she got a 7 furlong drill in preparation now to stretch out from 7 ace now to a mile and a 16th. The 3 Honor D Lady, as I mentioned, 1 of 3 for Safi Joseph Jr. We'll take a look at her most recent performance down at Gulfstream Park. Now, you look at her career. She has been to Woodbine once, where she was in the Grade 3 Mazarine. She was third. Now, looking at the Martha Washington and how this plays out, Ocean Club, you can see Glen Hill Farm Silks. They're on the front. Alternate Rock is chasing. And really in that stretch run, you look, Honor D Lady went pretty wide, lost some ground, but did show some interest late. I thought she was moving really well considering the trip that she got. It was just her second start now as a 3-year-old. And curious to see her back up at Woodbine. I like that she has the race there, and she's been racing well since then. Was able to win the Honey Rider in her first start of the year on the turf, and she beat Ocean Club in there. So nice to see that those two have a little bit of a rivalry down in South Florida. And looking at Safi Joseph Jr.'s runners in here, I think she's got a huge shot in this race on Saturday. The number 4, Dolce Sorpresa. This is one for Josie Carroll, 1 of 2, I should say. And Sorpresa is the way you say that. Looking at her performance, her lone start in 2023, she was 4th in the Star Shoot, beaten by a length and a half. I think in terms of the race itself, she's pretty even in the end. She didn't show too much there. It wasn't a bad performance. It wasn't something that necessarily caught my eye, but it was a good starting point for the season. Late last year, she was able to graduate, and maybe she's just sort of the type that took a little time to develop. She was hard knocking in her first several efforts, finishing second in 3 consecutive races. Then they tried her in the Glorious Song, but this will be the test for her in terms of distance. A couple others have gone a mile and a 16th. She has not. The furthest she's gone is 7 ace, and more recently 6 furlong. So I figure she's going to be a price against this bunch with all that said. Now, number 5, Be My Sunshine. We'll take a look at her most recent performance. Another one trained by Safi Joseph Jr. She last raced in April at Keeneland on the turf. You can't miss her. She's the gray on the outside here. You can see the famous Ramsey Silks, and she gets to the clear, and she really cruises home nicely. And I think when you're looking at this race from how it played out in a pace perspective, the number 8, Miss Riddler, was in front the entire way, was the pace setter, set fractions that were to her liking, I think, in horses that were making up ground late that looked good. Those 2 being the 5 and the 3, and they kind of rounded out the trifecta. So I loved that performance from her. You go back to her prior effort, she was second behind Well Into in her second career start, and she was a horse that won on debut. And when you look at Safi's numbers, there's been points where he's really hot with his firsters, but typically his horses really start to develop in their second and third career starts. So she was an early bloomer. I think it's positive to see Kazushi Kimura ride this one. As I mentioned earlier, had ridden another horse in here and probably had the option of several and went with this one. So I like seeing that. And I think this horse is intriguing now, trying synthetic for the first time. Now, the class of the field, arguably the number 6 Wonder Wheel. She's 4 for 8 in her career, a Grade 1 winner, and she's a multiple Grade 1 winner. She won the Alcibiades, then used that as her kind of launching pad for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Now, looking at her now as a 3-year-old, her first race, the Suncoast, maybe she needed a race. She was second, but she did fall flat in her next 2 efforts. And most recently, we saw her in the Kentucky Oaks. So, in a big way, major class relief against this bunch. The other thing, though, to maybe note as well is it's going to be a surface change. She's raced strictly on the dirt in her career so far, but I think it's pretty promising to see her working up at Woodbine for quite some time now. And her most recent drill was quite flashy, 47-2 for 4 furlongs, the 8th fastest worker of 147 at the distance. So curious to see what she'll do. She'll also receive Lasix for the first time, which is something to point out. The number 7, Speed Trap. The other Josie Carroll trainee was 6th in the Fury last time out, going 7 ace. Prior to that was second in the first start of 2023. My question with Speed Trap is, can this filly hang with the stakes caliber? Her only 2 disappointing performances were both against those Ontario breds in stakes competition. She does have a really nice work coming into this, but I have some reservations about her form, just comparing her to others in here. The number 8, Blind Spot, was the winner of the Star Shoot last time, but was disqualified and placed second. Prior to that, raced in some very competitive events. The Jessamine, Here Comes the Bride at Gulfstream Park, but prior to that was on a nice little win streak. And you go down the page, looking at the wins, you do see a win, though, at Gulfstream Park on the Tapeta. So interesting to see her getting back on that surface. She did race well in the Star Shoot, but wondering how far she wants to go. Yes, she's won at 1.70 miles, but really had to duke it out last time out, going 3/4 of a mile, and maybe that just came down the pace perspective. She was going pretty fast early on with some pressure in that race. The number 9, Tito's Calling, was 4th in the Fury. Prior to that, had a little bit of a win streak going, was able to graduate in 2022 and picked up things where she had left off right in her first start of May of this year. She was able to win pretty nicely. I think her last performance in terms of trip, she was trying to make up some, ground in that race, and I think she did the trick. She's going to need to take another step forward, but I'm excited to see this one stretch out around 2 turns once again, because looking at her 7 ace races, they're good, but I think she's a type that, looking at her other races going longer, she's going to prefer getting that added ground. And then rounding out the field, the number 10, Solo Album. One more replay we'll look at. We'll look at this one's graduation score last time out. This Daughter of Curlin raced at Gulfstream Park, had a decent effort too back, but really put it together and took them gate to wire here pretty easily at odds of 8-5. Ends up winning this one by 3 lengths under Rafael Hernandez, a new rider, though, in this race on Saturday. And since then, she's been working out really well, hasn't lost a step. And I think we don't really know what she's going to do. She just broke her maiden, but she's had some good performances. She's 4 for 6 in the money in her career, and I think she's well spotted for Mark Cassie, but she's got to go against the likes of Wonder Wheel and some other runners in here. So that is the field of 10. I mentioned Wonder Wheel as the name in here. Her works have been very good, and I think she's facing way lesser competition than she has in all of her other races. So I do make her my top pick here. It's going to be a chalky price to swallow. She's 6-5 on the morning line, but I also find a couple others intriguing. I think Safi Joseph, looking at his trio, Honor D Lady, have some interest in her. She's been very consistent throughout her career. I thought she did race well in the Martha Washington, considering that she did lose some ground in the turn, having to go so wide. And then also one of his other runners, the 5, Be My Sunshine. You look at those races in her career, to me, she's sneaky. The question is the surface. She's only raced on the turf so far, but you'd have to think she probably will like it. She has some good workouts up at Woodbine as well. And if the pace is right, you figure she can kind of close late, I should say, and at least pick up a piece. And then finally, the 10 Solo Album is a horse that I think, looking at those last 2, she has really improved. Maybe needed some things to kind of go her way as a 2-year-old. She was close, but to see her last 2 efforts and finally be able to graduate in such a decisive way, I figure she'll be a little bit of a price in here and maybe one to use underneath in the exotics. But the class on paper is the number 6 Wonder Wheel. The big question, though, will be the surface. Good luck here in this race.